Posted by you/fluffy_half_la767. I want to provide some backstory to explain where I am coming from and why this situation is so hurtful for me. My husband and I come from similar backgrounds, our families live paycheck to paycheck, and not many of our relatives went to college. We both have degrees and make significantly more than the rest of our respective families. When we got married, I was already a homeowner with a small house and my own car. My husband, however, had a lot of debt, and his credit was poor. It wasn't his fault. He had significant student loans, and he frequently had to help his family members with money. He also has ADHD and had mishandled some bills. I was understanding of his situation, but I was also eager to help him become debt-free so we could have kids without such burdens over us. He was making $80K, and I was making $100K. He moved in with me, and we split expenses 50-50, except that he didn't have to pay any rent. I fully covered the mortgage and home insurance since he's not on the deed, and I also paid extra toward his debt so he could pay it off early. His car loan is in my name, and I also cover half of that. I work in IT technical support, and I had the opportunity to take a job that required 50% travel but paid a lot more. We decided together that I would take this job for a few years to significantly increase our savings and pay off a large portion of the debt. I did this job for a little over 2 years until I got pregnant, and then I took a lower paying job, now $120K, that doesn't require travel. The travel job paid more, but it was incredibly hard on me. I was traveling to remote areas of small towns where the big warehouses and data centers are located, and the job was physically demanding, lots of cable pulling, moving equipment, and working in very cold conditions. I was miserable in this job and ended up with some back problems, but it was a sacrifice for our family. When I was 8 months pregnant, my husband asked for a paternity test. It came out of nowhere, and I asked him if he didn't trust me. He said he did, but because I traveled so much, he just needed some assurance for his peace of mind. He mentioned that his family and friends had asked him how he could be so sure of this pregnancy when I had been away from home for so many nights. It really broke my heart that I had done so much for this man, didn't try to protect my assets or my money, and yet he treated me like this. I became very emotional and cried about it, so he stopped pressuring me after that. Now our son is 3 months old, and he's insisting on the paternity test again. He's put his foot down, saying I need to have the test done, and he won't sign the birth certificate otherwise. I told him his name is already on the birth certificate because we are married, and I did the paperwork before we were discharged from the hospital. He didn't realize that would be the case and is now furious, thinking I tricked him. So here I am, stuck married to a man who not only doesn't love or trust me but is also an idiot. His family is calling me and pressuring me to let him do the test. My family is offended on my behalf, but some mutual friends are saying a test is not a big deal. But it feels like such a slap in the face after all I have done for him. Am I wrong for how I am feeling? Commenter. Not the jerk, but I just don't see why you wouldn't do the test. I personally think they should always do paternity tests at the hospital after the birth. I'm not saying you cheated or that you ever would, but it happens a lot. You'd be surprised how often men find out they're raising other people's kids. Ops response. A lot of people do a lot of things, but our relationship was supposed to be built on trust, which is why I took so many financial risks for him. If he had stated from the beginning that his trust was conditional, then I wouldn't have been surprised by this. But he's okay with me paying so much for him and just trusting that he won't cheat on me or divorce me and leave me exploited, yet he doesn't have to trust me in return? How is that fair? If he had discussed any of this before I got pregnant, it would have been a different situation, and I probably wouldn't have reacted so negatively. But to bring this up when I'm about to give birth? That makes me not trust him in return. What do I gain by letting him insult me like this? Update 2 weeks later. We did the test and got the expected results. He wanted one with legal validity, not just a home test. It was a lot more expensive, and he paid for it. We had to use an agency to swap samples and maintain a chain of custody. I was surprised and bothered that he had this planned, but since he covered the high cost, and it was in my interest to have a clear, indisputable legal trail, we went ahead with it. He's been over the moon happy since I agreed to do this, and I resent his happiness. He got the STI panel done, and it came back clean too. He was surprised by my request but didn't argue about it. He said it was just a test, no big deal. He was much more weirded out about the post-nup and flat out refused to cooperate there. I gave up on that because I consulted a lawyer and realized I couldn't get much from it anyway. Whatever I've spent on him and his debt is gone, and I can't expect anything back since we are in a community property state. We argued a lot about separating finances, with him accusing me of trying to control him using money. He pointed out that we were only a couple of years away from him becoming debt-free, and if I left it all on him, it would take him 5+ years. He still doesn't understand how his lack of trust in me is comparable. He kept arguing that if he were the one with more money, he'd have spent it on me, and that for me to bring this up now makes me a bad partner. He eventually came around and agreed to contribute more to the bills after seeing how much my family had turned cold toward him. I'm close to my family, and they had loved him, but this situation has upset them. My little sister was outright rude to him, which really got to him. Being the middle child, He was frequently teased and bullied by his siblings, and my sister was the only relative who loved him like an older brother and doted on him. My words and arguments didn't move him, but seeing her ice him out did. So now he'll be paying for his own car, contributing to insurance, and covering his debt by himself. He still won't be paying rent because he simply can't afford it. I wasn't going to ask him to stop supporting his parents, and after all that, there's nothing left in his budget. I wasn't thinking about divorce when I wrote the post, and I still don't want it. But I feel like I'm falling out of love with this man. It's as if the scales have fallen from my eyes, and all his faults that I had previously minimized now stand out glaringly. My mother is fully on my side, but she has advised me not to make any quick decisions. I don't know what I'm going to do. He's trying to be helpful and a good partner, but it feels like an act. Commenter. What he's doing now is just damage control. It's definitely an act. It's ironic that being accused of cheating has made you reconsider your thoughts on the marriage. Gee, I wonder why. He doesn't like that your family is icing him out? That's almost laughable, considering he seems to have zero self-awareness and no understanding of how his actions have impacted you. Frankly, you're right to rethink your commitment to him. His very actions have shown that he doesn't have the same level of commitment toward you. What's his next outlandish and childish act going to be? Sure, the baby is his, but the underlying accusation of infidelity that came with the paternity test has left a lasting stain on your relationship. I would continue to separate all finances and get your ducks in a row. You've already spoken to a lawyer about a postnup, so it might be worth considering drafting divorce papers. He doesn't seem to grasp the almost irreparable damage he has caused to the marriage. Again, zero self-awareness. The key question you need to ask yourself is whether you can live with him. Setting aside all the other red flags, can you live with the fact that he doesn't trust you? He may claim that he does, but that's clearly not true. He wouldn't have insisted on a paternity test if he did. Now, factor in all the other red flags and ask yourself, can you live with this? Can you raise your child in a household where one partner doesn't pull his weight and doesn't trust the other? As your mom said, don't make any hasty decisions, but it sounds like you already have a sense of where this is headed. Don't stay in a relationship that doesn't make you happy. It's not healthy for you or your child.